Hi, and welcome to an episode of the JetRails podcast. I'm Robert, your host, and today we're going to be talking about site speed. And more specifically, often when we talk about site speed, we're talking about images and media and rich content and things that may be affecting the speed at which different pages in your website are going to load. But today we're going to be talking a little bit more than just that. We're going to be diving in on the data side as well and talking about some of the things that are going to have an impact on site speed that are going to go above and beyond the average items that get looked at, and they're going to have a deep impact. And we're lucky to have with us today Subu with the, and I'm going to work on making sure I pronounce it right today, but you're going to correct me. We've got the Zycada team that Subu is the co-founder of. And Subu, would you do the honor of introducing yourself?
Definitely. Robert, first I want to say thank you for having me on the show. I've seen your programs. It's very informative. So thank you for that. I'm Subbu. I'm the founder and CEO of Zycada Networks. And what we have done is we have built a programmable intelligent edge platform. And in the context of e-commerce, our mission is very simple. Help merchants deliver the fastest shopping experience on the internet. That's our main goal.
Oh, and it definitely aligns with what we do at JetRails and what our customers' needs and expectations are. So, can you tell me a little bit about the name? I always love hearing how tech companies came to these unique names.
Definitely, I would say any founder that you ask, especially since all the good names are taken, that is one of the hardest problems, if not the most important problem, than the technical problem you're trying to solve. And for us, the name was inspired by the insect cicada. And I'm a math geek. And what drew me towards the insect cicada is they come out once every 17 years or something. It's powered by prime numbers. And the beauty about that is that you can have one predator that would specialize in taking down the species. So I thought when it comes to survivability, nature played really like a math move on these guys, and that kind of drew me to them. But in the context of Zycada, what it means is that you can, if you're a hacker, if you're a bad guy, you can maybe take one or two bots that we have, but you can bring down the network. That means that our customers are always happy, they're getting the best experience, and in a most secure manner. So that's the reason we came up with the Zycada. And Zycada.com was taken. So we had to come up with a nameplate and we made it Zycada.
Interesting. I like it though. Safety in numbers. You've got a swarm there that doesn't, they can throw whatever they want at it. They're not going to take down the whole swarm.
Exactly. Yeah. And you can definitely learn from nature, right? She has done it for a few billion years. And we're still here. So why not learn from the best?
Absolutely. I'm always trying. I mean, I don't get out of these walls all that often. You could probably tell from my tan, but no, it's true that, most of the best technology and the best ideas are based on things that we see in nature. So, we're just bringing things forward, but the universe has already done it. Now, we've been talking about e-commerce speed for years. As a community, JetRails certainly is a company, me personally, it is an important topic that companies from Google onward have really been bringing front and center for years and years. We still run into a lot of sites with speed issues, though. A lot of people wind up on our doorstep, and it's a big challenge that they've been, honestly, they've been suffering with. And so there's a lot that we're able to do, from the hosting perspective, bringing down the time to first byte and really providing a lot of different resources. They're going to have an impact, different caching layers and other things. But from your experience, how has the data been evolving? Are there new stats as we've gone through 2020, 2021, as we've seen these increases in e-commerce shopping trends? And, as businesses have had a chance to try to tackle some of this speed challenge, has that led to new data, new studies? Are there, other benefits that we're seeing to working on the loading speed optimization that maybe we didn't even know about before? what are you seeing as sort of the hot conversations in the market at the moment?
Yeah, that's a very deep question, Robert. So I'm going to kind of start by saying that so far we have delivered, I would say, a few trillion transactions on the internet, serving some of the, like the best names that have resources. I call them like $1 trillion resources. I mean, these are guys that hire the best engineers, best everything in the world. And we got the opportunity to go and work with them and show how we complement their existing stack. So in terms of your question about what you see in the last couple of years, one thing, I would start with the story here. I think that'll be interesting. It was a Friday morning. I vividly remember it was in the COVID peak time. The world was so gray. And that was the best call in my life. It was a merchant from France. He literally called me and he said, thank you. And he said, thank you, because yes, I delivered our services to some of the biggest, strongest, multi-billion-dollar technology companies, and we love them for all the obvious reasons. But what mattered to me, what kind of made like a warm, fuzzy feeling was this merchant, small merchant, his GMV is maybe like about $5 to $10 million a year. And he was saying that by having the conversion boost that we were able to bring to the table, which was close to like 10% for him, that made the difference between he not closing the shop and making it through COVID. And to me, that was worth it. As a founder, when you see that you are helping a fellow founder run a shop and not close down, it's totally worth it. So going back to your question about the last couple of years, customers are now, if you think about where do you want to shop, the first thing they think about is Amazon. It's in their mind share, yeah? So if you're a merchant, you're already competing with a $1 trillion adversary. And I always ask, as a founder myself, I always ask, what do you do to stand up against your competition, right? If there is any help that comes your way, how would you leverage that so that you can fight better? And speed happened to be, which was mind-blowing. I mean, you know this stat probably that Amazon published. Every 100 millisecond reduction in latency was boosting the top line revenue by 1%. And when I heard this, I believed it, but I thought maybe it's only relevant for the top of the top dogs, right? Because at scale, it matters. What we learned in the last 2 years, Robert, was even smaller merchants, when you shave latency, so we basically shave a significant latency, I would say, not 100 milliseconds. So we generally give our customers 8 to 10% jump in conversion and revenue metrics and all of that. And that's what we were able to do is by shaving the time, they were able to boost the conversion, which reduces the customer acquisition cost, which matters a lot for e-commerce business. So that's what we did. I mean, we understood that it mattered for big ones, but it's very gratifying to see across the belt, speed had an impact in driving business success.
Yeah, it's interesting that every time that I look at the studies, half the studies that I see look at sentiment from merchants, where merchants say that they recognize speed as an issue, but it's not getting as much attention as they think it should, that, they intended to do more about it in 2020 or in 2021. And here we are leading into code freezes for the holiday shopping season at taping time here. And so, this is sort of an ongoing challenge. Now, I often see sites focused on the speed of static elements that are going to be served up the same way consistently. So things I was alluding to earlier, images and rich media and other code that can be minimized and sort of pre-cooked and prepared. What is happening with the dynamic content? Because that's where often the biggest challenge arises, in terms of the merchant's ability to really impact it. Generally speaking, what are you seeing happening there, and what are some of the solves around that that's a topic that I rarely hear much about.
Definitely, Robert. So you kind of define the content set really well. So the content that's static, we have an amazing tool called the CDN. You can configure it well, and you can cache them up close to the edge, so it's faster. But when it comes to dynamic content, the problem is you can't store them at the edge. It has to drive all the way to what I call the mothership. So if you're running on Magento, if you're running it on BigCommerce or Commerce Cloud or your own cloud, what it means is that it has to traverse all the way to your CDN. CDN will understand that it's a dynamic content. Now it has to travel all the way back to the mothership, which is your origin. Now the business logic is getting executed. So they're trying to understand, is this personalized? Is this dynamic? Is this, dynamic pricing is heavily involved now? So it's doing all those computation in real time while your buyers are waiting. And what it means is that I call this the latency tax or the necessary evil that's being like bringing down our industry, because you need the dynamicity to boost engagement, but that comes with the latency tax, which is compromising the experience. So what we did was we thought, hey, if that is the case, is there a way to decouple the latency that's associated with the dynamic content? So if you do that, then you get the best of the dynamic content, the richness, the engagement, and all the other features you are investing to enthrall your user, your buyer, without losing their attention by making it snappier. So that's what we did. So we basically created, the way I look at it, Robert, is if you want to serve someone better, you should understand them. And the way we have created our bots, if you will, is our bots understand how your real users, your buyers, are interacting with your website, your e-commerce site. And we use that information to understand them so that we can make it faster for them. So doing so, we were able to show that they were actually, by not optimizing dynamic content, they were basically leaking, burning money up to like 8 to 10% of their top line revenue, which is quite significant.
It's interesting, because people don't even always realize the challenge that you have so many elements on an e-commerce site that are in flux. And that could be something as simple as the inventory, where a lot of sites now competing with Amazon and other big sites, that they're going to display things like how many items are still available right now in inventory. And that number is not static.
Yeah.
That's very much dynamic, aside from pricing and other things that might change from time to time. I could keep listing out these different things that are going to be in flux. And, so with traditional caching, you hole punch and you say, okay, these elements of the site are going to get cached with the different caching technologies. In the case of Magento, you've got, Varnish, and you've got, your content delivery network, your CDN, and other things that are storing copies of different files and different images. But you're still stuck with those hole punched items where absolutely it's got to go back to the Magento database and it's got to pull that. So, knowing that that's a challenge and that it is a challenge that's leaving money on the table for a lot of merchants, is this one of the items that's causing them grief with some of the speed reporting that they're seeing? Is this going to be picked up by things like Google's Core Web Vitals, Page Speed Insights, Lighthouse, some of the things that might also impact their SEO, their Google Ads rankings and auction fees and things like that? Or is this really just more of a conversion optimization and an end user challenge?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the right way to look at it. Any effort that you invest in your business, I believe that it will have a short-term or like immediate gain. It will also have a long-term gain. So when it comes to speed, what our customers told us was that by making things faster, there is an immediate benefit, which is you boost their engagement, which means they look at more products, and the more products they look at, it increases the likelihood of they liking something and buying something, which is always great for a merchant. But the long-term business or the long-term impact of that was, like you said, the search engines. Search engines today, we know that they rank by how fast you are on mobile, how fast you are on the different pages. And what that means is that if you optimize the dynamic content and if you remove the latency associated with that, what it means is that now you would boost the organic traffic that's coming to your site because you're going to have a better search ranking. Yes, we can always burn money and get that paid search, but I would say every I would say every marketing team out there is thinking about how do we boost my organic search. So we figured out that our bots understand that there are two sides to this puzzle, right? One is the merchant and the logistics that you talked about. Very, very important. The other one is the buyers and from where they are coming from. So since we are in the middle and we have the vantage point, we understand that when a search engine comes, we actually tell our customers what kind of an exposure you have for the search engine. Are you exposing your entire catalog to the search engine? Or are you only doing that by the geography? Like if you're a furniture giant, or if you're a big e-commerce giant, you have more sophisticated logistics, and which means that you expose your catalog differently by different geography, which means that your search engine is not seeing the whole picture because they don't come from everywhere. They only come from select points. So we work with our merchants and we help them understand that one, search engine exposure is important. Go to attack that differently, which we help them do it. We also help them by making things faster for the end users for both dynamic and static content, which means that now your organic search ranking goes up. So that's the long-term impact, Robert, like the one that you mentioned, apart from the immediate gain, which is also important, I would say, given we are entering into holiday season, I would say, why lose 10%? Let's optimize the dynamic content. That would be my take on it.
Yeah. And one of the things I think is interesting. So the SEO, absolutely, but a lot of merchants are also relying on other traffic sources, and obviously, conversion optimization. Hey, look, if you can get 10% more out of those, Instagram ads or TikTok or whatever the latest and greatest are going to be for a brand today, that's great. But algorithms like the ones used in Google Ads actually do look at speed. So, they've got their quality score rankings that integrate the mobile page speed, the landing speed scores. And, if you're dragging that down, you might be less competitive in the auction, with a low quality score. And that might lead to certain ads not showing, certain ads, needing to potentially cost more in order to be shown for the same, for the same auction, the same, keyword or banner placement or whatever it may be. And I think the other thing that a lot of people sometimes miss out on is that systems like Google, including for SEO, they look at this on a page-by-page basis. So sometimes people look at their homepage and they test the speed of their homepage. And once they get that in a sweet spot, they're happy. And they don't realize that they're missing traffic and they're missing conversions where it matters, places like product pages, where a lot of their marketing campaigns are likely to drive people anyway. They might have a lot of shoppers that never even stop at the homepage. So, you start to really look at it as a bigger picture and think about the customer journey and, and all the things that speed is going to impact along the way. And it's a pretty vibrant, illustration that's being drawn that it's not simplistic. It's not just that speed test that's going to check your homepage. Although, if you've got issues with the homepage, chances are that you've got issues with everything else.
Yeah. I mean, I would say you used a magic word there for me, Robert. You used the word journey, user journey, buyer's journey. And I think that matters a lot. And my mission is, I think every merchant out there, I want to democratize this performance delivery machine, if you will, for every e-commerce merchant out there. It doesn't matter whether you have an army of engineers or you are a guy who's just using, a site like Magento or Commerce Cloud to actually deliver content. I want you to have the best experience, right? But how many of them will have the sophisticated knowledge that you just talked about, right? Because you live this every day, you're thinking about this. And a regular merchant, it's hard for them to actually gain such an insight. So what we did was, like you said, it's not just your landing page, but it has, in fact, we found a heat map of many of the e-commerce sites. And most of the time, the heat map happens on the product listing page. That's the point of entry. You do promotions there. It's the most important page. And if you have many product suites, the product listing page plays such a critical role. And those are all the things we take into account. So we understand that not just the landing page, but every page matters because Google is measuring not just your homepage, it's measuring real user metrics, RUM, as your buyers are interacting with your site. That is being sent back to the search engine. People think it's only the crawling is actually measuring you, but it's not. They're actually sampling from real users' experience from Chrome and all of that, which is also feeding into the data. So you can just cheat them, if you will, by, for the search engine by only making that faster. You got to take a holistic approach and make your site faster in the true sense, so that you can make that organic search results go up.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people try to game the system when it comes to SEO and things like this for a long time, and I've seen very little long-term success out of those attempts. That companies like Google, what they really care about are end users being happy, because if they're not, they're going to stop clicking ads, or they're going to stop using Google and try something else. And even today, it's tech that they know that their position isn't solidified for eternity. So they have to keep delivering. And so they really don't want, companies, websites cheating the system. They want sites that are going to have, what the shoppers are looking for, what the users are looking for. And so, as long as you keep that in mind.
Yeah, I mean, you actually brought up another interesting point, Robert, that I want to double click into, which is trust. If you're a business, the most important thing, in my opinion, is establish trust. In my case, I want to establish trust with my e-commerce merchants, with my SaaS merchants, with my SaaS players. And in the context of e-commerce merchants, you got to establish trust with your players, right? Like how Google wants to establish trust by saying, I'm going to be consistent and I'm going to make sure that if you're faster, you are faster in the true sense. So kind of, if you take that trust as the actual building block, I think it plays a very critical role. If you do something right, it takes care of itself in a lot of ways. You don't have to game the system. You do it well, you're going to benefit your end users, you're going to benefit your buyers, you're going to benefit the search engine, and you're going to benefit as a result of that, right? Instead of gaming the system and finding some hacks, I think doing it right actually helps a lot of problems go away, basically.
Yeah. So thinking more specifically about your team's experience, I know that users of platforms like Magento are probably doing, if they're paying attention to their speed, they're probably using some things already, like Redis, to help with some of the caching that we're talking about here when it comes to things like data. Mm-hmm. What is your experience, and what a typical stack looks like, and what it takes to really take it to the next level? How much effort is it to deploy something like your technology? How long does it take? Because I find that that's often one of the pain points. It's the amount of effort really makes things prohibitive, that businesses don't want things that are going to make their day-to-day maintenance of the site harder. They don't want things that are going to be take too long and be too costly to deploy. So what are you seeing as sort of a normal starting place for these merchants, and sort of an end point? What does it take to get there to get it right?
Understood. So what we basically do is we help merchants by simply making their DNS name point to us. And typically we give a CNAME, which is a way they map. Say if your shop is www.example.com, we would CNAME that to Zycada, and then we would automatically dial to your mothership, right? Wherever your origin is, we're going to get the traffic there. That's the only effort that's needed. We don't make any code changes. We don't inject any JavaScript. We don't ask you to make any changes to your mobile app. We don't give an SDK. All we ask is make your DNS point to us. That's about it. And it usually is done less than 5 minutes, right? As soon as the DNS mapping is mapped, what we do is we map it straight back to your current setup. So even though you have made the DNS change, it's really not pointing to us. It's pointing back to your current infrastructure. And then we get the SSL certificate installed on our infrastructure, and we are actually ready to take the traffic. Once that's done, for the first 7 days, we are taking the traffic that's your real users are using, but we are not making any changes. We are just proxying that to your current infrastructure, and our bots are learning your real user behavior. Usually after a week, we start to go into what we call an enforcement mode. At that point is where you actually start to see benefits. You would see the site speed starts to go up for users. That will happen immediately after a week's time. And then after, I think Google takes 28 days to kind of get that back into their system. So you will also start to see other benefits like the search engine go up and all of that, which is a long tail advantage, but immediate advantage, you would see it in a week. And the only effort that's needed is a DNS change.
Interesting. So if they're already using, like a lot of our users are using, services like partners like Cloudflare that are providing content delivery network service, the web application firewalling and other core components of the stack, you basically become a hop along the way. And so, traffic is going to route through your systems, but ultimately they get to use the rest of their stack for the other things that are needed in order to have the right security and performance and reliability and such.
Yeah. In fact, I actually advocate our customers that the best way to use Zycada would be make Zycada the primary infrastructure for dynamic content and make your CDN the primary for the backup content. But regardless of which CDN you use, Robert, we all know, all of us have battle scars to prove it. We all know that best of the networks go down. It's a question of when. It's not a question of if. When that happens, do you want your website to go down, right? That's the biggest issue. So what we have done is we have built a product called DNS Director, which has zero allegiance. So it goes back to my trust point. I want to win the trust of my customers. It's not about me taking all the traffic on Zycada. So that this DNS Director is built that would monitor the health of your service on your static CDN as well as your dynamic edge, which is on Zycada. And what we do is if either of them goes down, it automatically maps the traffic to the healthier network till the other network comes back up.
Because so if, I'll, poke at a few, whether it's, CloudFront or Akamai or Cloudflare or Fastly or whatever CDN you're using, image CDNs like Cloudinary, whatever you're using, that if that goes down, you're going to act as a failover and vice versa, that basically your systems are going to help make sure that, because things, doesn't matter how big, we see the biggest of the big, our partners and good friends at AWS and, have outages, every major cloud, the bigger they are, the bigger they fail. I think a lot of people enjoyed watching Facebook go down a little bit more than even I would have expected a few weeks ago. But there's no too big to fail here. That they'll all fail at some point.
They all do, but like I said, I'm a math geek. They all go down, but they all don't go down at the same time. And that's the thing. I want to instantly turn e-commerce site into a multi-CDN site. So keep your CDN, use Zycada, take that extra latency away from dynamic content and bring down that extra 10% that you're losing to others, right? Simple decision. And it makes your risk go down. So especially when you're getting into the holiday season, I know that given my experience with e-commerce merchants, this is the most important time for you. And if you're a small merchant, God help you, this is the most important time for you, right? So please take every step that you can and make sure that someone else's problem doesn't become your problem. For a CDN, if the CDN goes down for an hour, that's okay. They will be there tomorrow because these are multi-billion-dollar companies. You can't do that. So please take precaution, convert into a multi-CDN. It's a no-brainer. And do that and you will have the peace of mind.
Yeah, well, I couldn't have said that better myself. I do like redundancy, and that's the name of the game in these, at JetRails, we talk about mission critical. And that's what these businesses are. That's what their websites are to them, that this is not something that can just go down on Black Friday and no one cares. No, it matters. It matters a lot. And that's why we go through all the steps that we do to ensure success there. Thinking back to to the speed that's able to be achieved by going through a system like yours, is there a way before deploying to have an idea of how much speed is going to be gained through deployment of your system? Are you able to, because there are a lot of things where we're able to look and say, look, a site, because it's got certain issues, time to first byte is at 3 seconds, and we know we'll have it well under 200 milliseconds. And, and so we can estimate already some of those time savings. Or, you see big images and, okay, that these can be compressed down, and you'll go from, 4 megabytes of images being served up to 100 kilobytes worth. And that's going to have a major impact. So there are things that you can sort of estimate or guesstimate in advance. Do you find that that's something that you're able to do, or is it typically just based on the average, that 8 to 10%?
So we actually go and give a demo for our merchants where we show that, hey, this is your site's current speed, if you will, and this is what we are able to actually reduce that latency. And they are, like you said, e-commerce merchants, they are pretty sophisticated. They understand that the need for speed is important because their buyers want it, right? I mean, we are here for our customers, like that e-commerce merchants are there for their buyers. Their buyers want speed. They're going to deliver speed. They don't care how they deliver the speed. They will deliver speed. So we were able to show that, hey, we can, when it comes to dynamic content, we are the top provider today. The other thing, Robert, that I want to really bring it to your attention or your audience attention is most of the cloud providers, say Commerce Cloud or from Salesforce or Adobe Magento, BigCommerce, that mothership is in the US, but the merchants are all over the globe and the buyers are all over the globe. What it means is that, say, for a buyer in Australia, if they want to use your site and you are on Adobe Magento or you are on, say, Commerce Cloud, you still have to traverse all the way. I call it like traverse the little pond called Pacific Ocean and actually come from that to here, yeah? And that takes time, yeah? You can have the best CDNs, they'll find you the best route, but that's only the network latency. You're talking about 100, 200 milliseconds right there on the pipe. On top of that, you're talking about the business logic that you got to run. It takes an additional, say, 200, 300, 400 milliseconds. You're talking about 500, 600, or even a second for that to come all the way from 500 milliseconds to a second. And what we do with our technology is, since our bots compute all the necessary content for your buyers as they are browsing your site, we map that journey, we get that in 30 milliseconds compared to 800 milliseconds, which translates into a good jump. And it's a no-brainer because all you do is just do a DNS change and then we shave that latency. That's another big advantage is if you're a merchant that's using Commerce Cloud or Adobe Magento, BigCommerce, any Shopify, we would make you faster, not just for the merchants in US, which we are already delivering speed, but for merchants outside the US as well.
That makes a lot of sense because even if we're hosting Magento or Adobe Commerce, even when we're doing it with, which we traditionally do for most of our larger accounts on the cloud, most often with AWS, occasionally DigitalOcean, that generally speaking, if they're operating one store, you're talking about one database in one location, maybe with some failovers in another location, that sort of thing. But generally speaking, most of these companies, absolutely, that you're trying to get back to one source of truth for the database. And so that certainly speaks to me and makes sense. Now, I did want to ask, there are always economies of scale when it comes to these things. And e-commerce merchants, there's so many things that are put in front of them every day. Hey, if you go back and watch a lot of our episodes, you'll see everything from, most recently, things like live chat, and go back a while and you'll see things like reward points and loyalty programs and all sorts of shipping and payment systems and things that can enhance the shopping experience. Not everything is going to align with every merchant. Based on how your team is going to market, do you find that you align with any size business? Are you able to, be in a good position to support a startup or SMB, or is this typically more of a mid-market and enterprise issues, something that more established companies are at the point of dealing with and that you're better set up to to solve, because I know a lot of these things, they come farther and farther down market over time. But, especially, as they build up steam, it's usually the more established companies that have the resources to identify the issues and focus on addressing them.
That's very true. So that's exactly our strategy as well. So we started from the top end of the market and we're coming down all the way to the mid market. These are merchants with at least 10, 20 million in revenue and up, all the way to we also have customers who are Fortune 100, I should say, who are in the several $1 billion of revenue, and we were able to test it and we saw the values. That's our market we are targeting today. Just to satisfy my curiosity, I went and tested it on like 20 merchants who are on 20, 30 merchants who are on Magento and BigCommerce, like smaller merchants with GMV of less than 5-10 mil. And we saw that it's also beneficial to them. So they would actually benefit definitely, because they don't have the sophistication of the big ones and they will get it. But like you said, Robert, we want to go to them. We want to open the floodgates to them. We're planning to do that in Q1 of next year, where anyone can just come onto our website and they can benefit. But today we are actually targeting mid-market and up.
Makes sense to me. Well, Subu, it's been a lot of fun chatting about speed. For whatever reason, I live and breathe this stuff. I enjoy it even before I was working at JetRails. I'm just hardwired this way. But thank you for coming and sharing all this information for our audience today. Before we wrap up, any final words of wisdom? Anything that you think users out there should know about that we didn't get to chat about today?
Yeah. So basically, I would like to always have them think about how to boost your availability. So make sure that, what are the simple things you can do that would make your site better, right? One is, like you said, have a good caching strategy. If you don't know what that is, please talk to a friend who's probably doing that. It's very, very helpful, at least to get that away. And also think about what other solutions you can put in place that will make the dynamic content latency go down. I always talk about there are many sophisticated ways to peel to solve the problem, if you will. I find that there are two types of content that kind of is weighing a site down. One is I call it the first party content. The other is the third party content. So third party content is usually the marketing sites and all of that coming and loading it. Please make sure you use tools from Google and all the other open source, and make sure you put them below the page so that those things don't slow you down. So that's one simple thing that you can do that would make you get the burden down. Shouldn't take a lot of time. Talk to a consultant. If you don't have a developer, they should be able to do that very easily. The first party content, the dynamic content, which is driving your business, if you're open to it, Zycada gives a free trial, so you guys can come and test it. I don't want to make this into an ad. That's something that Robert talked about, and I totally respect that. But it's important because we figured out that any latency you shave helps you not lose your money. And when it comes to e-commerce conversion, I call it the mother of all KPIs. Please keep a tab on that, because you can grow your revenue, but if the conversion is not under check and your customer acquisition cost is high, that's going to plague your business.
As I like to say, work smarter, not harder. So with that, thank you again for joining today. And to our audience, as always, thanks for tuning in. Stay safe, stay healthy, and happy selling out there.